What do you do when the game changes around you? We live in an age of continued media. Whether it lives on in the form of a reboot, a reimagining, or just a continuation of the original. If the original incarnation elicits even a modicum of success, it will ensure future projects. Perhaps the result of creative stagnation, artistically stymied by the body of previous work. Perhaps the response to a glut of entertainment, increasing risk of innovation. Perhaps it is the cyclical nature of all entertainment media, to be consumed and reimagined, at the whims of entropy and evolution to change into an extended mythos. Regardless, the change does not occur in generations of oral traditions being elaborated and embellished to form the fantastic. Rather, we have a continuous stream of content which spans generations. There are kids who grow up playing Pokemon Red and Blue, who are now old enough to start playing the Let's Go Pokemon games. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a different beast than the Pokemon video games. While Pokemon is discretely divided into generations, each self-contained into the main series games, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a continuous evolution in the card game, where one set flowed into the next, thematically and mechanically. Even the anime had little vestiges of the previous series cropping up now and again. Partially due to the lack of set rotation, most older decks can still be played, with legacy support occasionally empowering archetypes to the competitive level. But no one can deny that the game has changed at a fundamental level. The emergence of archetypes pushed the games toward prefabricated decks, where the synergy of cards with the same name convention replaces the hodgepodge of good generic cards smashed together to form a coherent strategy. Occasionally, a meta deck would break the mold, like Plant Synchro, where there was no reliance on archetypes. But the trend has been toward rather isolated design. Deck building simplified to selecting an archetype, not playing the filler cards, and being pigeonholed into the prefabricated combos. Occasionally there is an innovation in the form of unique tech cards or side deck options, but the tainted wisdom of net decking further homogenizes decks to the most optimal, if not sterile, build of the strategy. It could be said that the skill in Yu-Gi-Oh! Has shifted from deck building ability to piloting the deck. But I would argue that increasing linearity and strategy removes skill in the piloting phase of play. A good portion of decks have combos, generally based on making a very strong first turn board, which must be executed in the exact same way every time, with potential contingencies for the event of hand traps. The only efficient counterplay option against the first turn overreach is these hand traps. The nature of the game has shifted from improvisation to mechanically executed procedures in many ways. But this is not necessarily a bad thing. Picture this. A nonlinear deck is a feat of improvisation, where each game is unique with the particular flourish of a pilot's own credenza, a process of exploration, discovery, and personal expression. Modern combo decks suffer from more linear strategies, where the duel is a performance, well-rehearsed, and played precisely. It would be intellectually dishonest to claim that the improvisation is superior to rehearsed play, as it would be a fruitless battle between dogma on either side. But in many ways, I feel as though the player base has removed the fun elements from the game. This is not restricted to the casual and competitive divide, but rather me being entranced by a bygone era. I think everyone who has played the game for long enough has had this experience. Starting out the game with a deck you really enjoy, satisfying mechanics, art you find interesting, or just a healthy attachment to the character who played the cards in the anime. Your deck was maybe not the best, but it was personal, unique, and something you owned. But then you start to feel the pressure to change. Whether you have access to stronger cards, or you feel the influences of the competitive spirit. First, you add a few staples to your deck, rotating out cards which were situational. Maybe add a few cards which naturally complements your deck, such as Guardian Iados and Modulces. Then perhaps the inclusion of a small package to increase the overall power level or shore up a weakness. Finally, including an engine to boost overall consistency. Piece by piece replacing every component until only the germ of the deck remains. Sometimes with every card being replaced until the deck is recognizable only in the retrospective context. It inspires comparison to the ship of Theseus, in which the deck slowly transitions into something unrecognizable as your goals and understanding of the game evolve. Your deck is a personal expression of your individuality as a duelist, but the trend of parallelization does not affect only the homogenization of decks, but rather the cookie-cutter decks act as a synecdoche for the colossal shift in the nature of the game. Picture a time in your Yu-Gi-Oh! Career in which you were undeterred by concepts like consistency or synergy, when situational cards were included for that 1 in a million chance that the stars aligned and you could pull off a ridiculous combo. Try to recall the feeling of pulling a card from a pack and being excited, not because it was a chase secret, but just a good card which you could slot into your deck. Try to remember the feeling of those subtle optimizations of your deck, including specific tech cards like Elephant Statue of Disaster, in case of the off chance that you ever win against a discard deck, rather than generic floodgates which crowd modern side decks. Try to reflect on the speed of the game, how each turn was relatively short but filled with meaningful micro-decisions. Now think of the current state of the game. The design space limitations of archetypes, the solved formats leading to homogeneity of decks and gameplay, the speed of the game causing games to become arbitrary, with the win condition being predicated on going first, and the general lack of interaction, as the length of first turns necessitates new end-of-match procedures. I guess the dark side of nostalgia is having to confront the present, a terrible shock after the rose spectacles fall. But you still have access to the old cards, still have the love of the game, and most importantly, you still have the memories of your favorite era. Next week, I will dive deep into my cure for the ennui of homogeneity.